What are we gonna do when we get back?
What are we gonna do when we get back?
I take a shower and hit the rack.
Take a shower and hit the rack.
Welcome to Charlie Mike. If you're a combat veteran with an entrepreneurial bug and want to know what highly successful combat veteranpreneurs are doing to transform their sacrifice and experience to create their visual reality, then this is dedicated to your inspiring and fulfilling future. And now your host, Dwayne Paro.
No way, gotta run, feet, lots of fun.
Invest in Yourself ebook is my free gift to you for listening to the show and becoming part of the CO Nation. To receive your free gift, please go to landmarklifecoaching.com. Thank you for joining us on this special edition episode. There are so many courageous champions who support our veterans that do it purely out of admiration and love for the sacrifice and service exemplified by our veterans. Not for credit, not for recognition, and not for money. These courageous champions stand in the shadows of our veterans and do all they can to help make their futures fulfilling and empowering, because that's what each and every veteran deserves. Our guest today is Jeremy Paris. Jeremy was born in Buffalo, New York, and joined the U.S. Army immediately after graduating from high school. After 10 years as a personnel administration sergeant, he left the military to become a government contractor performing computer support for the Department of Defense. Although the initial plan was to be a contractor for 2 years and then split, he spent the next 16 years supporting the same customer within different roles. Jeremy has been on the staff of Veterans Artist Program, VAP, a non-profit organization, since 2010, and after leaving the DoD contractor world, became the Executive Director of VAP. While at an event in Washington, D.C. with VAP, Jeremy shook hands with people representing so many veteran-focused organizations that he was blown away. It was a realization that most veterans had no idea that these organizations existed that prompted Jeremy to start the Veteran Resource Podcast, where he interviews veteran nonprofits and thought leaders. The new mission of the Veteran Resource Podcast is that every single one of the 20,000 veterans transitioning out of the military each month will have the opportunity to learn about and get plugged into the veteran organizations that are available to them. All right, Jeremy, welcome to the show, and thank you for being a guest.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on and tell our loyal listeners all about your contributions to the veteran community. But before we get into your veteran support experience through your Veteran Resource Podcast, can you give our audience an overview of your connection to the military and veterans?
Well, sure. I was in the Army back when I was 17 years old. Right out of high school. I graduated, and that summer I went in, and I got kind of tricked a little bit by the recruiter. You know, that never happens, but, you know, they kind of convinced me that since I was able to type, that I should go into personnel. And so I said, yeah, I'll go into personnel for that huge $1,500 bonus. You know, when you're 17 and you grow up poor, that's like $1 million. And so I went in and started doing personnel, and I loved being in the Army. And I started off as reservist for the first couple of years, and then I just decided I'm going active duty, and went all in.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny. You and I have talked in the past, different occasions, and there's so many different parallels that pop up. It's funny. I kind of fall into that same category, the trickery, where I went into the Air Force, though, and I went in for medical administration is what I was hoping for. And they said, oh, you go under general, it pops up all the time. Yeah, I guess I missed that. So I ended up doing something else, which worked out. And I did enjoy my time in the military. But that's funny when I hear those similar stories, because I was like, okay, only me. So.
I got tricked not once but twice by two different recruiters. When I went active duty, it was a similar situation where my reserve unit had gone away. And when I was getting ready to go away, they said, you have to go to a different personnel unit, and you're going to be driving like an hour and a half to Niagara Falls instead of Buffalo. And they said, or you can go and you can try out with one of the other units that were in the same building. And one of the units was civil affairs. And I was like, oh, wow, those guys are hardcore. I definitely want to go and try out with them. And I tried out on my 21st birthday. We went in the field and I crushed everything. And they said, all right, you know what? We're going to bring you on. We're going to get you retrained. You're going to be civil affairs now. And I was like, I like this so much. I want to do civil affairs full time. I'm going active duty. And they were like, all right. And I went and talked to the recruiter and I said, hey, I want to go civil affairs full time. And he said, the way that they do it, since you're already trained personnel, we'll get you in the personnel slot because that's open now. And once you get in and you're there for 30 days, you just talk to your commander and you get a 4187, you fill it out and you switch over. And I was like, yeah, all right, let's do that. And you should have saw the commander's face when I asked for 4187 to switch my MOS. I mean, he almost choked. He was laughing so hard. And he said, you do realize you're in a shortage MOS, right? I'm like, what does that mean? He said, it means that you're going to be personnel for the rest of your life.
That's funny. Yeah, I could certainly see that happening. It's that gotcha. So
yeah,
that's good. So Jeremy, let's go into tell our listeners about your veteran resource podcast that you've started and how that's contributing to the veteran community.
Absolutely. So you may or may not know this, but there's literally thousands of veteran-focused nonprofits out there. Some are helping military members, some are helping veterans, some are helping family members, but there's thousands of these organizations out there, and each one has their own niche that they're fulfilling for this space. And most veterans getting out of the military have no idea. Like, they know about a handful of them, and they're starting to get, some of the bigger ones are starting to get a little bit more popular. So they might even know about like 10 of them, but there's no way that they know about all of them. And there might be something like, I was on Facebook today and I saw somebody that said, hey, I know this friend, he's a veteran. He's having some trouble and he just wants to go fishing. So if anybody has a boat, you can donate. And, there's organizations out there that will take you fly fishing on kayaks. And that's something that most veterans wouldn't think about. But like, here is a very specific case for a veteran that was looking for something that is going to affect his well-being. And it's there. It's available to him. And so I was able to put that link out there for him and connect him. And sure enough, there's a chapter right where he is.
Yeah, that's incredible. There are, you're right, there are so many nonprofits out there. Last I heard it was over 40-some thousand. And that's such a large number. But, that's the thing is, what's the resource that points people there, right? And what provides what is always that missing link.
Exactly. And that's what I was looking for when I came across the podcast idea. I was looking for that answer. How many nonprofits are out there? No idea. Like, if you look for veteran service organizations, which is a very specific thing, you'll find like lists that have like 20 or 30 on there. Mm-hmm. But it's different, like non-government organizations. Some people will call it that. Some will call it a veteran-focused organization. So there's a lot of different terms even that people are calling it. So it's hard to get any kind of accurate count of what is out there. Like you said, could be 40,000, but I've also heard 20,000. Mm-hmm. So somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 might be the answer, or it might not.
Yeah, well, I think the key, like you said, but you might only come across 20 to 30 of them, right? And that's a significant difference between what's there supposedly and what you can actually conceivably find.
Right. And I'm finding these on a regular basis. Literally every single week, I learn about new organizations. And many of the times, because one of the questions that I ask in every single episode, the final three questions, one of the final three is, who would you like to hear on a future episode? And now I'm already talking to a nonprofit that I know and trust, because that's where I started, from the base of the people that were around me that I was already connected to.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are recommending ones that they know about. And so almost every time somebody will recommend one, and it's like, the Research and Recognition Project. Really? What's that? I've never heard of that before. And I go and look it up, and I find Frank Burke and connect with him, and he's happy to come on the podcast. And then he ends up telling me about somebody. And this word of mouth is how I've been finding a ton of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I started up my podcast, my first concern in my head was, beyond can I do this, is will I find enough guests that I can consistently put out shows? And I tell you, I've already booked my entire year releasing one episode a week, and I was just thrilled with that. The veterans that are out there running businesses, and whether it's to support other veterans or not, usually they're veteran-based businesses that are hiring veterans, the ability to interview on these podcasts is actually sought out, and kind of, people are very honored to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a great way in, because it's helping you to be able to find the guests that you can have on your podcast. It's helping the person that you're having on, because now they could get noticed by people who didn't know about them before. And it's helping the listeners, because they're finding out about these people and able to connect as well.
Yeah, exactly. So what's something you've learned about the needs of our veteran community through podcasting?
So one of the things that kind of, when you first start out, well, when I first started out anyway, you think of what veterans need, and it's kind of like, there's wounded warriors that can benefit from, a number of different organizations that are out there. And there's ones that could benefit from, like, service dogs and things like that. But what caught me off guard, what kind of the aha moment, was that there's a lot of organizations, great organizations out there, like the Mission Continues, Team Red, White, and Blue, Got Your Six, the Veteran Artist Program. These organizations help to empower the veteran. And instead of saying, we need to give you something, it's saying, no, you guys are incredible leaders in your community. You guys know exactly what your community needs, and you're willing to volunteer your time and effort to make your community better. We're going to empower you to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I've come across those organizations myself, and they have such an honorable way of doing it, in a mission that really, like you said, empowers the veteran, right? Not all veterans are desiring or positioned to start a business from scratch, but they want to be a significant contributor in supporting veterans. And so this is a much easier way for them to step into that role and use that leadership that they already have, and build these circles of comrades to empower and support each other.
Absolutely. And you're able to surround yourself with people that are like you. Mm-hmm. Like in the case of Team Red, White, and Blue, they have both veterans and non-veterans alike in their communities, in their chapters all around the country. So when you're going and you're plugging in with this organization on a weekly basis, you're becoming friends with people that, like, instead of just going to an organization that is just all veterans, and now you're excluding yourself from the rest of the community, you're able to still be around veterans, but also be around non-veterans alike.
Yeah, and that absolutely is, solving one of the most common issues culturally, right? Is being able to have veterans and those that aren't necessarily veterans be in the same space, doing the same mission, and not have a lot of disconnect. So it really serves a lot of purposes when those organizations have that type of mix.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So who, in the time that you've been doing the podcasting, is there anybody that stands out to you as, kind of like your most unique or interesting guest that just kind of blew you away? You had them on, you heard great things about them, but then they came on and you're like, wow, this guy or this lady is just amazing.
Wow. There's been many, many different people. And just so you know, on the podcast, I have the main focus is the veteran nonprofit organizations, but I also talk with thought leaders. And these are not necessarily nonprofit organizations. It might be a veteran-run business, or it might be a person who is doing amazing things, and they have a lot to offer to the veterans. So I've interviewed so many great people. John Lee Dumas was great to bring on the podcast, and being able to hear some of, I mean, for those out there in the podcasting world, you know who John Lee Dumas is.
Yeah,
You have to know who John Lee Dumas is.
Yeah.
And being able to hear him talk about some of his military background that you don't normally hear on his other channels, that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because obviously I'm very familiar with John Lee Dumas, being in the podcast environment myself, and that is a good point, because that's not the focus of his podcast, right? And so having him come on, because a lot of people probably don't even recognize, right, that this guy is a veteran and has served his country. So yeah, that's cool. What do you think's been the most rewarding part of supporting veterans through the podcast?
So one of the things that I found along the way also, and this was another one of those aha moments, but after talking with organization after organization after organization, there was a single thread that I found that was woven through a lot of them. I would say the majority of them. And that was that they had a story, at least one story, of somebody who was feeling down. They were maybe contemplating suicide, or having some issues with PTSD and things like that. And instead of going down the dark hole, they ended up, through a friend or somebody recommending it, but they ended up getting connected to this organization. And then it completely changed their life. It changed their fate. And these people not only survived through this, but they ended up becoming community leaders themselves. A lot of them ended up moving up the ranks in the nonprofit and were leaders in that nonprofit. And others even left that nonprofit and started their own nonprofits.
Wow, yeah, that is that is so rewarding. When somebody is looking for that glimmer of hope and they find it through your show, or through a connection that was on your show, they hear it and it just gives them that spark that they needed. So great point. That is definitely a rewarding aspect of that.
Absolutely.
So a lot of podcasters, they have their studio, right, where they record most of their episodes. And do you also do mobile podcasting for veteran-based events, or are you primarily in your studio to record?
Primarily, I'm in my studio, but you as you mentioned this, I am going down to DC later this week. I've got an in-person appointment, and I'm bringing my Yeti with me. I normally am using the ATR 2100. It's great for just me, but when I'm doing an interview across the table, I like the Yeti. So I'm able to bring that with me. I bring my laptop with me and be able to do an in-person interview.
Yeah, I think that's such an effective way to meet a broader audience and get broader exposure for the veterans, is if you can, you have the ability to go mobile and go to some of these events. Obviously, that's, less of what you do, but it's an interesting aspect to be able to add in, because then people get to meet you in person too, because a lot of times it's over the internet and you don't ever necessarily meet the host directly, and so it strengthens that bond within the community. Absolutely. And I'm also the executive director now of the Veteran Artist Program, so I'm able to meet people through there as well. Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get right back into talking more about Jeremy's Veteran Resource Podcast, all the great things that he's doing with it, and all the great benefits that are being had by the veterans on the other end. So we'll be right back. Landmark Life Coaching's vision is to be the nation's premier coaching partner for inspiring and empowering those in transition. They partner with courageous groundbreakers in transitioning veterans to create fulfilling and empowering futures that they desire. They have partnered with various entrepreneurs and transitioning veterans to leverage their core strengths and implement the framework for the future they always dreamed of. Could you or anyone you know benefit from a success partner to bring clarity to your future or their future? If so, please check out landmarklifecoaching.com for more information and charliemikepodcast.com for the Charlie Mike Podcast, showcasing the successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Okay, we are back with Jeremy Paris with the Veteran Resource Podcast. Before we went to break, he was telling us all about how he got started in the military and then transitioned into the government and then a contractor role. And he has been supporting the veteran community with his Veteran Resource Podcast by interviewing various nonprofit leaders and for-profit leaders in the veteran space to be able to make these resources known and available to veterans out there, because as we all know, there's a lot of resources, but if you don't know where to go get it, it doesn't do anybody much good. So Jeremy, now that we're back from break, I wanted to take us into my In the Zone segment. You know, this is where we all love when we hit that sweet spot or get that feeling that we are doing what we are meant to do or are where we are meant to be. So let me ask you, Jeremy, what was that point in your life that you felt compelled to make supporting veterans a significant part of your life?
Oh, yeah. I remember it vividly. So when I was volunteering with the Veteran Artist Program, we had this thing down in D.C. going on. It was with the National Geographic Channel. They had a red carpet premiere for American war generals, and the Veteran Artist Program was one of the sponsors. So I got to go to this and hang out, and I'm all dressed up in a suit and feeling great. And I was walking around and I was shaking hands with people the entire night, just introducing myself, talking with people. And at this point, my interaction with veteran organizations was just with the Veteran Artist Program and the Sixth Branch, the sister organization that was helping out in Baltimore with revitalizing the area. So that was really the only two organizations that I had come in contact with. But now here I am all night long. I'm shaking hands with organizations, and everybody is like, "Hi, I'm so-and-so with Team Red, White, and Blue," or "I'm so-and-so with Team Rubicon," or, Got Your Six, and all these organizations. And I remember going back to B.R. McDonald. He's the founder of the Veteran Artist Program. And during the night, I said, "This is incredible how many veteran nonprofits there are." And he said, this is nothing. There's thousands of them. There's literally thousands of them. And I was like, "You're kidding me. No way. There's no way that I spent 10 years in the Army and then another 10 years in the DOD surrounded by military, and I don't know about more than 10 of these organizations." So I went home and after the event, I Googled it, searched it, and sure enough, I kept finding like 20,000. I kept finding 40,000. And I was like, okay, somewhere between 20 and 40,000 of these organizations exist. And yet I knew about hardly any of them. So I was like, if this is a reality, if I don't know about these organizations, then the 20,000 veterans that are getting out of the military every single month, they obviously don't know about them either. So I need to figure out a way that I can help these veterans to find these organizations. And I spent a good amount of time trying to figure that out. I had an hour and 20-minute commute each way to work at the time. And I was listening to podcasts the entire time. So, Pat Flynn with Smart Passive Income. I was listening to Internet Business Mastery and Entrepreneur on Fire and I don't know, a bunch of them. And I remember listening to all these podcasts, and I'm driving and my mind is wandering, and I'm trying to figure out how I can get the word out to these to veterans about these organizations. And I was like, I could do a blog site, I could do this, maybe I could do that. And it finally hit me when John Lee Dumas, at the end of one of his episodes, was saying, oh, and by the way, I have a course where I can teach you how to start your own podcast. And I was like, maybe I could do podcasts. And from that point on, I spent the next 6 months learning everything I could. I bought books, I bought Udemy courses, and finally I bit the bullet and I joined John Lee Dumas's Podcaster's Paradise. And I just soaked in as much as I possibly could. And then I just launched. I made it happen.
Yeah, that's a great story, because it's funny how people get into podcasting. It's not, it's not really a direct route usually. It's as a result of something. And for myself, I'd been blogging on Huffington Post and LinkedIn, and I was like, I write a lot of articles, and I try to release one a week, but eventually I'm going to run dry on unique content, right? Stuff that I'm not just referencing somebody else's stuff. And so I'm like, wow, I would really like to get the stories directly from people in the space. And so podcasting was like an automatic thing to go to. And so, so I went through similar things. I didn't use JLD stuff, but I used, of course I'm drawing a blank right now.
Podcast Answer Man?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of his name, and I didn't want to slaughter it, so
I can't think of it either.
Yeah, Ravensworth or something is his great. Yeah, so say I'm slaughtering it. So, but yeah, so I used his stuff, and then as well as a guy I know has a podcast, and he does a podcast pilot program, and so he graciously took me through that, and it really helped to get me into it and be able to add this value back to the veteran community.
Absolutely. And podcasting is just really an entryway in there. Like, from the podcast, I've learned that the people that are hitting the podcast, they still need some help with getting plugged into the nonprofit. So I'm going to be building out my website this month and next month, making some changes to make it super easy for them to get all of the information from those nonprofits. And also, with the click of a button, they're listening to the podcast, they click a button and they're connected directly to that nonprofit. So the podcast, even though it started off as being the one thing that I was doing, it is going to be just one of the things in a series of other things.
Yeah, that's so true. So that's a good segue into a question I was going to ask you. What advice would you give to others who want to be able to support veterans? Not necessarily even podcasting, but in general, they want to be able to help the large veteran community.
Well, I would say to try to get plugged in with some of the nonprofits that are in your area, because they're already doing a lot of the work for you. Like, they already are trying to figure out what it is that the veterans are needing, and then they are working on creating different missions to get that to the veteran. So you can find out who is in your area, and then you can volunteer with those organizations, you can donate to those organizations, or you can even join up on the staff of those organizations.
Yeah, that's some great advice. There are so many organizations out there, and they can be that much stronger and that much more robust if people are willing to pool resources, right? Bring your talent, bring what you have to the one that speaks the most to you, and be able to add value to the veteran community that way, because and at the end of the day, we need to be able to bring all these resources together for veterans, make it a holistic approach, and so that it's one-stop shop, and the veteran can come, they know, they go to a central location, and they can, that's virtual or whatever, and they can reach out and get the different resources that they need, rather than another nonprofit, another for-profit continuing to stand up, but not being connected and nobody knowing they're there. And it takes a long time to really build a name in the space of any market for people to know you're there and trust and value your resources. And so if you can get in with an existing organization that is already adding value, and you can just increase that value that's already there and already trusted, then that is all the more better for the veterans themselves.
Absolutely. And on top of that, if you get plugged in with some of these organizations, you don't even need to be a veteran to get plugged in with these organizations. They're always looking for people that are non-veterans to help out as well. And this is going to not only help the veterans, it's going to help your community. And it's also going to give you a new network of people that are like-minded who also like to give back. They also have that feeling of service. And you're going to find a lot of new friends. And I mean, if you wanted to do this selfishly, you could probably find some customers that way too. Mm-hmm. But, everybody helping each other, that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, that's another great point because, it's not just veterans that helping veterans. It's, civilians helping veterans and becoming part of that larger group for support, which is needed by all veterans. So, all right. So this has been an amazing conversation, Jeremy. And as we're running out of time, I'd like to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you or learn more about your podcast. Absolutely.
You can go to veteranresourcepodcast.com. And the website is going through a little bit of an upgrade, so things might not look exactly right all the time there, but all of the content is there, everything that you need. And if you wanted to shoot me a message, you can tweet at me. I'm at ParisJ13, or you can send me an email, jeremy@veteranresourcepodcast.com.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for your support to the veteran community.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Remember, loyal listeners, we are the home of the free because of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to Charlie Mike Podcast with Dwayne Paro. Our objective is to bring successful veteranpreneurs to help inspire and provide insight into what helped them become successful, with the hopes you can take away various strategies you can implement in your entrepreneurial journey. Visit us on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you thought of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hoorah!